Well, today is Earth Day, and that means many people will be thinking about what kinds of actions we can take to protect the environment. But people with climate anxiety are thinking about this all the time. In fact, there are kids in our province whose eco-anxiety is so bad it's affecting their ability to simply do day-to-day tasks. So today on Blue Sky, we'll hear how one family is helping to support their 11-year-old to turn climate anxiety into action. And as always, we want to hear from you. If you've experienced climate anxiety, what has helped you get through it? What are you doing to nurture and protect the environment? What are you thinking about on this Earth Day? We'd especially love to hear from young people today. We know a lot of them are off school this week. Give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, our Blue Sky producer, Nicole Huck, recently met up with a Regina family to learn what climate anxiety looks like for their 11-year-old. Here is the story of how this family is helping support their child through that anxiety and finding ways to channel those big and scary emotions into tangible actions.
Thick stacks of library books are piled up in 11-year-old Kike Duick's bedroom and around the house.
This book's The Tree Line. It's about boreal forests and their effect on climate change. I really like it because it takes in different perspective of different indigenous peoples, and also lots of things that people never think to look at. For example, bogs, and also like methane burps from unfreezing Arctic taiga.
Kike is passionate about nature. The 11-year-old is an avid birder and is keenly interested in mushrooms.
And their mycorrhizae help trees connect and communicate. They take up all the leaf litter and are the world's greatest decomposers.
Kike's mom, Denise Fornwald, says she noticed this intense interest in nature early on.
When they were 3 years old and they first picked up a bird book, they looked at it for 3 hours. You know, they have this focus and determination and this ability to take in huge amounts of information that you don't see in every child.
At some point over the years, that interest in nature and the natural world turned into a deep concern for a warming climate.
I actually kind of started learning about it when I was 9, 2 years ago. I got some books from the library about it, and I was surprised that life would just go on as normal when these terrible things are happening. I'm talking about the effect of warming and the sustainability crisis in our world. We're using too much and over-exploiting the earth, which I feel like will lead to grave consequences.
There is a word for what Kike and many other young people are feeling. It's called climate anxiety. According to a recent study in the Journal of Climate Change and Health, which surveyed 1,000 young people across Canada, more than half of the kids said they reported feeling afraid, sad, anxious, and powerless. 78% reported that climate change impacts their overall mental health, and 37% reported their feelings about climate change negatively impacted daily functioning. Kike is one of the 37%. Their mom, Denise, says it's been hard watching her child struggle.
There are days that Kike has struggled to go to sleep, but more so there are days that they lose their motivation to really care about day-to-day basics. You know, like getting dressed and going to school, or being enthusiastic about running or sports or things like that.
Oh, I feel bad because I'm not feeling like I'm doing enough or something like that, but then eventually I'll feel better, and then I'll feel like I'm not doing enough again, and it'll just go in a cycle on and on.
It was one of those low spots where things got scary.
It was a Friday, and we had said bye to Kike. They're old enough that they're able to walk the few blocks to school, and so no one was left in the house. And then I went off to a meeting, and then partway through the meeting I got a phone call that Kike hadn't shown up at school, which was really unusual for them. They'd never tried to skip school before or anything like that. So we were really worried. The school was worried, and we had really no idea where they were. So we were really, really scared.
Friends and family were out searching the streets. The police were called. And a few hours later, they located Kike on the steps of the legislature.
That day, and just before as well, I had felt so down and hopeless that I felt like I needed, and I had read in books that action is the best antidote for this, and so I just felt hopeless, and I felt like there was nothing else that I could do. And so I went out to the legislature alone without telling my parents.
Kike had printed out little flyers about climate change and was passing them out.
I'm worried about droughts and fire. I really don't have a good tolerance for smoke. And so those summer days where it's so smoky that most people can't go outside, I'm really affected by that, and that's caused by climate change. I haven't been able to do some races because of the smoke last year, and I had to stay inside for like 3 days at a time, which is hard because I really love being outside.
The day Kike skipped school turned into a teachable moment for the family.
I mean, we're sad that our kid was anxious, and maybe that we didn't notice how bad it had gotten. I could understand, like, there was a part of me that was angry that they did this without asking and that they didn't think about the consequences, but mostly I was just so relieved that they're okay, that we did have a talk about how we needed things to go in the future and to be safer and to stay in touch about where they were. But I don't think... There wasn't a part of me that didn't understand why they did it. I understood why they did it. And that's why we really knew after that we needed to help them find safe and appropriate action, but that they absolutely needed to take part in something that was going to make them feel like they had some power.
Kike has become increasingly involved in the Cathedral Forest Project, planting trees in a nearby city park.
It's like a microbiosphere of a forest, like a microforest, in the city, which will attract birds and mushrooms and wildlife. I just really like it because it's calming and it's fun and it also is making a difference.
Chris and Denis try and be supportive of Kike's passions.
Every time Kike is outside, they come back with little sticks, and then they use a bunch of glasses and yogurt containers, and every single window starts to be full of little baby sticks. And then they take very good care of them. They water them, and they check the sunlight, and they talk to them. And I get wet, dirty footprints on my bed, which I'm not happy about. So that's why right now the windowsill has less little baby seedlings, because we've moved some downstairs. And we have plans for a little mini greenhouse so that some of them can move outside sooner, because our house is full of baby trees.
Kike has connected with the local Enviro collective. The 11-year-old has gone door knocking, collecting signatures for a petition to be delivered at the legislature. They've been part of art projects and podcasts, and connected with groups such as Better Bus Youth. And while Chris and Denis are supportive of Kike's passions, they've also had to set some boundaries.
Luckily, Kike is a reasonable kid, so if we say, sorry, you're not going to be on social media yet, you'll have to find other ways to reach a broader audience, they've accepted that. We've said, sorry, we're both school teachers and we don't want you to spend a day a week outside of school, and they've been less keen on that, but we've come to the agreement that we can find days like professional development days that kids are not at school and allow actions then. Or we can drive them to meetings in the evening and we attend with them sometimes. We don't have to be the experts in everything. But at the same time, if your child, like our child, has some really intense interest, it is good to have some basic knowledge. So when we're in the library, there's certain books based on, the title and what I read on the back that I say, no, I have to read this first. Kike hates that because I'm a slower reader than they are. But I know that sometimes my role is to protect them, and I have to jump in to what they're interested in so that I can do that. An easier example maybe is with mushrooms. So if your kid wants to know everything about mushrooms, you have to connect with experts and you have to know something yourself so that you can be safe. Climate change action similar in some regards. We can't just send you out into the world to tackle it on your own. We got to go with you.
That support looks different for Chris.
It's made me realize that it's okay sometimes to be vulnerable with my own children. We've had a lot of really great talks, often late night talks, where I've been able to express some of my own anxieties and connect on that level. And I always feel closer to you after we have those talks. Sometimes we feel like we can't as parents. And yes, like Denise said, we have to protect our kids at some level, but things like climate anxiety are real, and they're different sometimes than other anxieties because those consequences are so true. And so I think a lot of parents are feeling this anxiety and sometimes feel like we can't share some of our feelings with our kids.
Kike says they find these late night talks comforting.
I feel a lot more peaceful because it's really a way to open up and get out what's in my brain, because a lot of time there's just thoughts floating around that really can't go away. And when I talk about them out loud, it really helps.
They've also connected Kike with a professional counselor, and they've been working on teaching Kike lessons in self-care that they'll need if they continue down this path of activism.
It doesn't feel like a direct action, but taking good care of yourself, like sleeping, eating well, exercising, taking rest when you need it, is actually an action, because we need you to be well so that you can keep doing all the other things that have a huge impact. So self-care is an important part of it.
Chris says Kike's passion for the environment also makes the entire family more accountable. They're mindful of driving less and choosing to bike to work. Their recycling system is elaborate, diverting almost all their waste to recycling and compost.
We're doing more, thinking about these things more, trying to be better citizens and people inspired by our own kid. And so Kike's kind of led the way, and I think that's a lesson that parents can take, that kids can lead the way in lots of ways, but maybe sometimes we should follow them.
And Kike has their own wisdom to pass along.
You don't have to take on the entire problem by yourself, but just do what you can. That, I feel, is the most important teaching that I've gotten on this journey, and I feel like it's really helped me through a lot of hard times. Look, I already have a red oyster dogwood.
Oh, it's the same?
Yep.
In the meantime, their home will be overflowing with little propagated plants, just a symbol of the way they care and nurture the earth, while they care and nurture each other. For CBC Radio, I'm Nicole Huck in Regina.
Thanks so much to Blue Sky producer Nicole Huck for bringing us that story. You can read another version of it on the CBC webpage. Just search Beautiful Mess. Kike and a bigger group of young people are planning Fridays for Future protest at the legislature for next month. But this time it is on a PD day, so no one has to miss any school. Today is, of course, Earth Day, and we are exploring eco-anxiety and eco-action today on Blue Sky. And we'd love to hear from you, especially if you are a young person who has experienced climate anxiety. If so, what has helped to ease it? What are you thinking about on this Earth Day? You can get in touch. 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, we have several guests joining us for the rest of the show today. Rob Dayglow is with the group Enviro Collective. It's Regina's community climate hub. Thanks so much for joining us, Rob.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Also in our Regina studio is Kimberly Colodi-Watt. Kimberly was recently recognized in the Grassroots category of the Regina 25. She is a driving voice behind Better Bus Youth, which helped secure a pilot project for free public transit for all youth 18 and under in Regina, reducing barriers, cutting emissions, making the city more accessible for future generations. Kimberly, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here.
And here with me in our Saskatoon studio is Lauren Wright. Lauren got involved in the Fridays for Future movement in late 2018. In 2019, she started the Saskatoon Youth Climate Committee. She's also a plaintiff in the first constitutional climate case by youth in Canada over climate inaction. Thanks for being here, Lauren.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so all of you have been listening into the show, and we all heard that story with Kike there and their parents. Kimberly, let's start with you. Have you experienced climate anxiety?
I have actually. Starting when I was 11, I was really worried about the world that I'd bring my children in and how the elders here expect us youth to fix everything that they have done. Even though we are like the thriving future, they should also take accountability for what they've been doing to the climate. And I actually met with Kike recently, and he's such a smart kid. Honestly, at 11, I could never.
I was so impressed when I was listening to Kike talk as well. Kimberly, how did your anxiety, what did it look like? How did it present?
I was always outside. I was always trying to get out and clean randomly. Sometimes my mom gave me heck for this. Sometimes I'd clean up areas where it was really dirty, there's needles everywhere, and she gave me a lot of heck for that. But I just wanted to do my part when I was little.
Yeah. Lauren, what about you? Have you experienced anything like this?
For sure, yeah. I think that I've been very open about having mental health struggles and mental illness that have further impacted me through eco-anxiety. I've been very lucky to present internationally about climate grief, climate anxiety for young people. I've been able to publish in a medical journal, providing a youth perspective on what climate anxiety actually looks like and how the grief that we hold for the climate is legitimate and how it is impacting our daily lives.
I'm wondering, just in case there's a parent out there listening and they're thinking about, identifying signs that their kids might be experiencing climate anxiety. What did you experience? How did it present?
So for me, I've always been a pretty observant kid. Mm-hmm. I'd say when I was younger, my parents maybe had a few concerns about how worried I was about recycling or that I was obsessed with polar bears when I was a kid and melting ice caps. I think just with so much going on in the world today, that anxiety can be hard to identify and separate. Okay, what is climate anxiety? What is anxiety about politics, about social norms, about all the things that are happening? But kind of just identifying that root cause and making sure that your kid knows that even if you do not understand personally because you do not have the experience as a young person in the age of climate change, that they know that you're listening and that you are not going to shift blame or feel that you're very guilty, even though those feelings might come up. Just making sure not to shift that to the child.
Interesting. I am curious. You kind of just touched on that, Lauren, but about what drives people to do the work they do. So, Rob, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about Enviro Collective.
Well, Enviro Collective, I first stumbled across it during a Fridays for Future march at the Legislative Building. And what really blew me away was to see 800 to 1,000 youth on the steps of the Legislative Building picketing about climate change. And it was so bizarre that I said, why are the kids doing this? Why are youth doing this? Shouldn't they be having fun, playing PS3, all that kind of stuff? And I realized what an impact is happening to our youth. And that's the day I signed up and said, hey, how can I be a part of something bigger?
And can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
So one of the things, when we did an environmental scan of all the different groups and organizations out there, climate action is so diverse. It's like a tapas restaurant, so many different things and avenues from groundwater to climate to butterfly pathways. So one of the things we decided to do is become more of a networking hub and try to bring all these groups together and amplify the voices, especially of these youth groups who really didn't have a place to go. And so we host a monthly newsletter and we highlight some of these people. Matter of fact, Kike will be one of our new stories coming up in our next newsletter.
So Lauren and Kimberly are both young people. Rob, and you mentioned working with Kike there. What is it like for you to see these young people taking on such a big role in this fight against climate change?
First of all, I feel bad that we've let it go this long, that our youth have to do something like that. But then if youth want to come forward, my job as an adult is to give them whatever resources so they can do the things they want. And so that's been one of our things that we've been working with the Enviro Collective. And we're focusing more on youth organized activities so we can engage more youth.
Well, today is Earth Day. That means many people are thinking about what kinds of actions people can take to protect the environment. But there are many people with climate anxiety. They are thinking about this all the time. We would love to hear from young people on the show today if they've experienced climate anxiety. We'd love to hear what they're doing about it, so they can get in touch, 1-800-716-2221, or they can email bluesky@cbc.ca. We did get an email from Carmen. Carmen writes, I volunteer with Sask Outdoors, our provincial organization for outdoor educators and enthusiasts. We are committed to helping youth deal with climate anxiety. Our work in indoor and environmental education now requires addressing how the environment in our backyards, parks, and other natural spaces is changing due to climate change. And still, we are filled with hope. We see that connecting youth with nature-based learning, mentoring them in land stewardship, and sometimes simply providing the opportunity for kids to sink their hands into the soil when planting a flower or sapling can ground us to earth. And Carmen goes on to say that you can check out Sask Outdoors online and on their Instagram page. Thanks so much for your email. Again, you can get in touch by email like Carmen did, bluesky@cbc.ca. We have several guests joining us today on the show. Lauren Wright started the Saskatoon Youth Climate Committee. Rob Dayglow is with Enviro Collective in Regina. And Kimberly Kolodi-Watt is a driving force behind Better Bus Youth in Regina. Kimberly, can you tell us a little bit about Better Bus Youth?
So Better Bus Youth is an organization that helps youth advocacy and focuses on giving them opportunity and power to speak what they have to speak. And we have also focused on Fare Free Transit pilot project, which was passed in January 29th by the City Council. And we are currently working on getting that fully out to the public by September of 2026.
Why is transit something that you're passionate about?
Because it's something that I'm passionate about because a lot of people use it in Regina, and also to me it just shows how much the affordability crisis that we have, because we have to depend on a bus because not a lot of us can afford a car or even a bike, to be honest. And I have my sisters driving the bus all of the time. So I'd like to make it easier on my family and other families in Regina like mine to take transit so that they can be in the public. And
I am curious, Kimberly, environmentally speaking, why is it so important to ride the bus? Why is public transit important for the environment?
Because if we get more people on city transit, there will be less single occupancy cars, so less gas emissions, less cars on the road, less accidents, and bus transit can get you from point A to point B faster and safer, and it also prevents drunk driving too, just relying on the bus driver.
Yeah, lots of positives. Lauren, what led you to start the Saskatoon Youth Climate Committee?
So back in late 2018, early 2019, the Fridays for Future movement was really emerging with Greta Thunberg, and I was lucky enough to be in an incredible program off the grid at Tommy Douglas Collegiate that really was teaching me about land-based learning and about what it means to be an activist. So through that, I kind of saw that when I was sitting in City Hall meetings, when I was presenting to the councillors and the mayor, that there wasn't necessarily a spot for young people to have our voices heard beyond the very complicated and difficult to understand process of officially applying to present at meetings. Those meetings aren't open to young people a lot of the time. They might be during school hours, all of that kind of thing. So I saw that real gap, and when I determined that unless I advocated for it, it wouldn't be created at the municipal level, I decided to create a space where Saskatoon youth who had similar interests, who were also worried, could turn their anxiety into action and create a more unified approach to climate activism in Saskatoon.
I also mentioned earlier on the show that you are part of a big court case over climate inaction. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So, yeah, the LaRose versus Majesty of the King case is the first of its kind in Canada. It's a constitutional case of 15 youth from across the country. All of us have had very real impacts from climate change in our lives, and we believe that through those impacts, our rights under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms have been violated. So it's been a tough process. As I said, we started in 2019. I was 15. We are going to have our first trial date in fall of 2026. So I will be 22. So it's quite the arduous process, obviously, but we recognize that one of the only ways beyond direct action that we as young people had a voice, because we could not vote, was to use the justice system. And that recognizing the violation of rights that we have documented that exists for all of our plaintiffs, submitting that and showing how the federal government has failed us, initially through the lack of any kind of science-based plan, but now from the Net Zero Emissions Act and the fact that that's not in line with the best available science, we decided that it'd be in our best interest to start the fight early and just have that go on for as long as we can in getting constitutional rights to a safe and healthy environment where we can all thrive, and having federal government actions that support that mission.
I don't think that most people go through a court case maybe in their whole lifetime, and you've been part of this one that's going on for years and years and years. What kind of an impact has that had on you?
Honestly, for me, it's been an incredibly empowering experience. I think this is something a lot of Saskatchewan youth can relate to. We feel that we maybe don't have as much of an impact. We live in a traditionally more conservative area. We aren't in major population centers like Vancouver or Toronto and Montreal, where we've seen wonderful participation. But as Rod was saying, we had 3,000 people in 2019 come out to our Fridays for Future strike. So for me, it's really been a way of showing prairie representation, showing the things that are happening to us out here, and also advocating for other groups that I'm part of, the disability community, the queer community, showing how all of these issues are connected has been wonderfully empowering for me.
Kimberly, does that resonate with you as well, that feeling that, things might be a little different here on the prairies than in places like Vancouver or Toronto?
Yes, full-heartedly. We're not really that common. I have friends outside of Saskatchewan, and every time I talk about it, they're like, what's a Saskatchewan? And I have to explain that, we're not really popular. We're mostly on the prairies, and you don't really hear a lot about the prairies.
Rob, I understand you are about to start a new fund. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's interesting. It all came about because of my meeting with Kike. When Fridays for Future was well engaged, we were mentors for the organization, and they had received donations, and we helped them manage it. We were doing the administration and so forth. What happened was COVID hit, and it really wiped out the leadership of Fridays for Future in Regina. So when Kike called and I heard that he was looking for some funding to go and do something at the legislature, we said, well, listen, we're sitting on this fund. Why don't we do something about it? So we drilled down, met the original people from the Fridays for Future who are now at universities around Canada. And we said, listen, why don't we take this money and invest it in the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation and create Fridays for Future Youth Empowerment Fund? And we're about to launch it, and Kike will probably be one of the first beneficiaries for his organization. But we've taken this legacy dollars, and every year for the interest, and provided more donations come, we'll be able to empower youth groups throughout the city if they want to be more active and do things. So that's how that's all come about. And like I said, I was so impressed with Kike that we're actually going to be highlighting this young fellow in our next newsletter, because we highlight community activists at the Grassroots.
When you were listening to that story with Kike, Rob, Kike uses the they, them pronouns, I should mention as well.
Yeah.
We heard about how important being involved in the local urban forest project was for them. What do you think it is for you, at least, that about working with plants that is kind of so empowering?
This is for myself, yeah. It's one of the things we realized that youth are gravitate to that. It's something easy. And so one of the things we're going to start doing is when we have tables at different events, we're going to be doing a prize game, kind of like a charades, pick a question, answer. And we're going to give away butterfly pathway ranger kits so that youth can start planting wildflowers and attract pollinators.
Amazing. We just got an email from Elizabeth who writes, just listening to your program, wanted to commend the youth on the show today. I remember being a youth in Prince Albert in the 90s and feeling very isolated, but finding my community through a group we started called the Prince Albert Earth Advocates. Today, I am the executive director of a charity I helped found called One School, One Farm. It connects schools with land partners to build relationships and increase biodiversity and carbon sequestration. This is one of the ways I deal with my eco-anxiety. Working together in the community feels great, and we have grown to 22 ongoing partnerships, including a new one in Regina. Elizabeth says to you too, you are inspiring. Thank you for your work, dedication, and love of the planet. I guess, Lauren, when you're thinking about taking all these actions, like does it bring you, I guess, a sense of relief? Does it bring you some joy to know that you're making a difference?
It does, yeah. I think that one of the main ways for me to combat the anxiety and the grief is through action. I think a lot of people find strength in that. For me, particularly, I've kind of made this, which is strange to say at a young age, but my life's work. I'm at school right now learning about environmental biology and how we can use policy initiatives to have better climate standards, carbon sequestration, all those wonderful things. So I'd say yes. For me, it's been the most empowering way to interact with my community, especially. Once I learned that, I wasn't isolated in these feelings, that I could create a space for other people also to share their emotions and to figure out what action looks best. I think that was probably the most empowering thing I could have done, and it's always wonderful to hear that even one person has been inspired or felt legitimatized by my experiences.
At the same time, I understand you are, in part, you just mentioned studying politics a little bit. We've woven into the rest of your studies. Do you feel that there is a political will right now? We have a federal election going on. Is there a political will to tackle some of these really big issues, to make a difference when it comes to climate change?
I think it's been just such a divisive issue in a way that no other scientific issue really has been. It is an undisputed fact that we are experiencing warming, that our current rate of warming is in excess of the recommended 1.5 degrees with 350 parts per million carbon dioxide. Not to get too into the weeds of the science with it, but I think that it's just become such a partisan issue in a way that really does not encourage climate action. It's become a real point, especially when we're talking about carbon pricing and other initiatives like that have been adopted in the past to confront Canada's current role in climate emissions, and especially the disproportionate role that a lot of our provinces play compared to their population size. I think that especially going into this federal election, it's not being given the attention that I feel it deserves. I feel with all of the attention that has been paid to the economy, rightfully so, with global trade right now, that there's been a lack of recognition that climate justice is also economic justice, and that investing in climate measures is a good policy for economics, especially if we're looking to reverse deficits in the future. It's all about investment in a future, and I feel like that's not getting the recognition that it deserves.
I'm Candace Lipsky. You're listening to Blue Sky here on CBC Radio 1. That's 94.1 FM in Saskatoon, 102.5 FM in Regina, and 540 AM across the province. Today, of course, is Earth Day. It's a time to dig in, think about how we can care for the planet. We are talking a little bit about eco-anxiety today, as well as eco-action. I know there are lots of students who are off of school today, and if they want to get in touch and share their experiences with us, they can do so by giving us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or they can email bluesky@cbc.ca. I want to introduce one last guest. They've been working with a group of children to explore how to make cities more pleasant and livable for children, plants, and animals. They go on adventures in the city, documenting their experiences through photos, art, and audio recordings. Whitney Blaisdell is a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Education at the University of Regina. She is also the founder of Play YQR, and I caught up with her earlier and asked her about what the children say makes a city less pleasant.
Is cars and how kind of car-centric the city is. But it's really interesting so I'll sometimes prompt children to explore unfriendliness or things that are unpleasant or that they don't like. And then I get photograph of cars and also parking lots. And children will specifically talk about parking lots as like someone has paved over, because they know it's also about plants and animals. And like this could have been a home once for plants and animals and a nice space to play. And now it's this, and they find them very ugly. And I think children don't, they don't have a lot of fun in parking lots until there's a snow mountain in a parking lot. Then it's a whole different space. But and they record sounds too, and they will often record sounds of cars. But we've found a lot of barriers when we're just trying to explore the urban environment with having bike lanes and having walkable spaces makes a huge difference in the daily lives of children and affects how we can get somewhere, where we can go, how far we can move, how comfortable families are, even allowing me to take their children out, depending on what neighborhood we're in, and also their encounters with different beings. There's a lot of spaces in the city where you can try to go for a walk and it can be quite unpleasant for children, but they also aren't encountering a lot of plants and animals.
Yeah, you kind of just answered my next question, but I'm curious if there's anything else. What are the kids saying about things that might make a city more pleasant, and how are those things, I guess, connected to climate change?
That's a great question. Kids really love to spend time outside. So part of the project is when I'm exploring with children, they pick the location. And there are very, very, very few indoor spaces that children, if they can pick anywhere in the city to play, that they'll pick. And so even the option to go outside, and then the climate crisis, we have really polarized climate here. So when it's extremely cold or extremely hot, then that's affected. And so the climate crisis, is affecting their daily lives in terms of where they're able to go and can they even explore their favorite spaces that otherwise they would be able to. So that's a really big thing. But children really, really love water. And so fountains they love, and they love the sound. They'll record the sound of running water. And they also will sometimes talk about kind of the health and the color and the smell of water. And so that's also something we're still exploring this project, and we're still analyzing the data, and it's still in process. But children's relationships with water is something that's really fascinating, and they seem to be deeply aware of the health of water, and they care a lot about ocean creatures, which is fascinating because we're so far from oceans here in Saskatchewan, but they will talk about ocean creatures a lot.
As someone whose favorite animal is an otter, I kind of understand that. They're so far. I guess we have river ones here too. But Winnie, I know that you have some thoughts on the word hope. And, I do think when we talk about climate change, often, a lot of us feel a lack of hope. What do you think the value is of hope through a climate change lens?
I think hope is an extremely important thing to be able to feel and nurture and to encourage, especially in young people. I do feel that hope is something that everyone should be sharing. I think people place a lot of hope on young people to kind of fix the climate crisis. And I think, well, I know even from speaking with children that they feel that as kind of a burden sometimes, and that this hope is not sort of evenly distributed as it should be. And so just making sure that adults and educators and people that are working with children are sharing that hope and sharing that responsibility. And when you're looking at sort of child climate activists, for example, doing that work alongside children and making sure that children can also actually look to adults for hope and feel like people do care and that people are doing something about this and not placing it entirely on their shoulders.
Whitney Blaisdell is the founder of Play YQR and is a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Education at the University of Regina. Of course, a big part of conversations around eco-anxiety have to do with hope. And Lauren, I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but do you sometimes feel, I imagine the answer is yes, but overwhelmed by that hope that kind of is placed on young generations to change the world?
Yes, for sure, for me personally. I think that when we're talking about hope, we're really placing that on generations that have had the least to do with the climate crisis. And for me, I'm a big advocate of not fully being only experiencing hope. That despair is a very legitimate emotion, and that feeling the full range of emotions beyond hope for the future is a necessary part of not only motivating us to create hope for ourselves and for others, but to make sure that we recognize how scary the situation is, and the fact that it can be incredibly overwhelming to wonder, what's my future going to look like? How is my future going to be impacted by actions that I'm not necessarily involved in? So I think as important as hope is to strive for, I think recognizing that there's a lot of other baggage emotionally there for young people in particular is valuable.
Yeah. Kimberly, what about you? Is this kind of the weight of hope something you've experienced as well?
Yeah, most definitely. This is something that Sophia Young has also experienced. One of my mentors within taking Better Best Youth, I always hear like this saying, like, oh, we have hope for the future in these kids, or oh, these kids are going to bring hope back to the earth. And we don't have that much power. The only power that we really have is our voice in action. We don't have the power like the city councilors do, or the federal or the municipal. We just need to keep pushing. That's what hope is to me, is that you want something, so you're going to push to take that action into changing it.
And every single one of you is taking action in your own way, and I think it's so incredible. All of you are doing something different, and Kike too, with their planting of all the little seedlings, which I really loved the imagery of. At the same time, as we kind of touched on earlier, there has been this shift in priorities, especially when it comes to the federal election. We are seeing governments, we are seeing companies place less of an emphasis on protecting the environment, reducing emissions. How are you, Lauren? How are you feeling when it comes to government action? What do you want to see governments and companies do to fight climate change?
So I think for me, it does get difficult just in how our Canadian economy functions, but looking at something that has been enacted, like the Net Zero Act, pushing for a 2050 net zero, I think that there's a lack of immediacy in most climate policy that has been enacted, and we're grateful for policy that is existing and that has been supported. But I would say overall that the message needs to be now. That every day that we delay, every election cycle that we delay, divestment from fossil fuels, investment in clean energy, investment in communities, that things do get worse, that it's, it might be attractive to wait 4 years in the future when there may or may not be a more balanced budget, but that in the future, the budget is going to take a harder hit because of the climate impacts that are being experienced in our province, in our country, and in the world.
And how do you balance that kind of personal responsibility with those huge, systemic beings like governments? Like, where do you draw the line? How do you find a balance, I guess?
So for me, I'm a big advocate of imperfect activism, of recognizing that, we are all human beings, that we don't exist right now in a society that fully allows you to make the best decision every time. That's just not a way that we are currently able to live, and that by placing all of that on one individual, it's gonna burn you out. It's gonna lead you to despair. So as much as we can, and we can work for systemic change, I think recognizing that a lot of us, we're young people. I'm 20. I'm not going to make a perfect decision every time, and expecting that of young people and of activists really does contribute to our mental health impacts.
Kimberly, it is Earth Day, of course. What are you hoping that people are thinking about today?
I hope they're thinking about what they can do for the earth. It can be little or big. It can be start recycling your bottles, or like taking them to Sorcan, learning how to grow your own vegetables, and just little stuff like that, because in the long run it means a lot, and you have a learning skill that you develop while you do these actions.
Rob, how about you? What are you hoping that people are thinking about today?
Well, I hope they're thinking about our young speakers today, because that gives me hope. With the Kimberleys, the Laurens, and the Kikes, that means that we're going to be in good hands, despite our efforts of not moving things along as fast. But if you don't have hope, then there's despair. And right now, when I see this empowerment of the youth, I have great hope.
Lauren, I will give you the last word. What are you hoping people think about today? If they can take away one thing from today's show, what do you want them to think
I
about?
want them to remember that systemic change takes all of us, and that right now that means voting. That means voting with your conscience. It means I implore you to think about the planet, to think about young people when you're casting your vote, if you've not cast it already. But above all, we all need to be participating in the system if we want it to improve.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all joining us today on the show. I'm feeling a lot of feelings, but hope is definitely one of them, thanks to, knowing that there are people like all of you out there doing a lot of good work. So thank you so much. Lauren, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Kimberly, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And Rob, thanks so much.
Great to be here.
Rob Dayglow is with Enviro Collective, Regina's community climate hub. Kimberly Colodi-Watt is with Better Bus Youth. And also we had Lauren Wright with us. She started the Saskatchewan Youth Climate Committee and is doing lots of work these days when it comes to climate change.